Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
I watched my 7-year-old son Tyler stare at the empty space under Grandma Dorothy's Christmas tree, where his presents should have been. Around him, my sister Amanda's 3 kids tore through 36 beautifully wrapped gifts. While Tyler sat quietly on the couch, his little hands folded in his lap. When Emma opened her 3rd tablet and Noah unwrapped his 2nd gaming console, Tyler whispered, "Dad, why didn't Santa come to Grandma's house for me?" The room fell silent. Grandma Dorothy glanced up from her coffee and shrugged casually. "Oh, honey, I forgot about Tyler this year." My blood turned to ice water as those words sank in. Forgot about Tyler. I looked around the living room at the chaos of expensive electronics designer clothes and toy sets scattered everywhere. Amanda's daughter Emma was already setting up her new laptop, while 9-year-old Noah compared his 2 new gaming systems. 6-year-old Sophia had received enough American Girl dolls to stock a small store. The pile of discarded wrapping paper reached nearly to my waist. Forgot. I repeated, my voice barely controlled. "How do you forget about your own grandson?" Grandma Dorothy avoided my eyes, suddenly very interested in straightening the bow on one of Emma's gift boxes. "Well, Alan, you know how it is. There's just so much to remember at my age." Tyler slid closer to me on the couch, his small body trembling slightly. He'd been so excited this morning, chattering about what Grandma might have gotten him as we drove the 45 minutes from our house in Columbus to her suburban home in Worthington. He'd even drawn her a picture at school last week, showing the 2 of them baking cookies together. "Mom, can I speak with you in the kitchen?" I stood up, my jaw clenched so tight I could hear my teeth grinding. Amanda looked up from helping Noah set up his new PlayStation. "Alan, don't make a big deal about this. Kids need to learn that life isn't always fair." I stared at my sister. This woman who shared my DNA, but apparently none of my values. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, even at 9 in the morning. She wore a new cashmere sweater that probably cost more than most people spent on groceries in a month. Her husband, Jake, lounged in Grandma's recliner, scrolling through his phone and completely ignoring the chaos around him. "Come on, Mom." I walked toward the kitchen, expecting her to follow. Linda, my mother, reluctantly joined me by the sink. She kept glancing back toward the living room, where Tyler sat alone, while his cousins played with their mountain of new toys. "This is unacceptable," I said quietly, trying to keep my voice down so Tyler wouldn't hear. "How could you let this happen? Alan, honey, you have to understand." Mom wrung her hands nervously. "Your grandmother has been struggling financially. She simply couldn't afford presents for everyone this year." I gestured toward the living room. "Those tablets cost $800 each. Emma got 3 of them. Noah's gaming systems are worth at least $1,000 combined. Sophia's doll collection is probably worth $2,000. You're telling me Grandma spent over $10,000 on presents but couldn't afford a single toy for Tyler?" Mom's face flushed red. "Well, Amanda's children have specific needs. They're in advanced programs at school and they need the educational technology." Educational technology. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Tyler is reading at a 4th grade level, and he's only in 2nd grade. Where's his educational technology? Amanda appeared in the kitchen doorway, having obviously been listening to our conversation. "Look, Alan, not everything has to be exactly equal all the time. Tyler will understand when he's older." "Understand what exactly?" I turned to face my sister directly. "That his grandmother doesn't consider him worth a $10 toy from the dollar store." Amanda crossed her arms defensively. "That's not what this is about, and you know it." "Then what is it about?" She glanced at Mom nervously before answering. "Fine. If you really want to know, Grandma Dorothy doesn't consider Tyler her real grandson. Not after Jessica. The mention of my late wife's name hit me like a physical blow. Jessica had died in a car accident 3 years ago, leaving Tyler and me to navigate life alone. She'd been the most loving, generous person I'd ever known. She'd worked as a nurse's aide while putting herself through community college dreaming of becoming a registered nurse. She'd grown up in a working-class Mexican-American family in South Columbus, and she'd been proud of her heritage. What does Jessica have to do with anything? My voice was dangerously quiet now. Grandma Dorothy never thought Jessica was the right kind of person for you. Amanda said, her voice taking on a cruel edge. She's not really Tyler's grandmother, so Tyler isn't really her great-grandson. Not like Emma, Noah, and Sophia. I heard a small gasp from the kitchen doorway. Tyler stood there, his dark eyes wide with confusion and hurt. He'd inherited Jessica's beautiful brown eyes and thick black hair, along with her gentle spirit. Now that gentle spirit was being crushed by the hatred of people who were supposed to love him. "Tyler, buddy, go get your jacket," I said softly. "We're leaving." "But Dad, I wanted to stay for lunch. Grandma said she was making ham." "Not today, son. We're going home." Tyler's lower lip trembled, but he nodded and walked back toward the living room. I watched him say goodbye to his cousins, who barely looked up from their new presents. Emma didn't even acknowledge him when he waved. "Alan, don't be dramatic," Mom pleaded. "Stay for lunch. We can work this out." "No, we can't." I looked at both women with disgust. "And you can tell Grandma Dorothy that this is the last time she'll see either of us." I found Tyler by the front door, struggling with the zipper on his winter jacket. His small fingers couldn't quite manage it, and I could see tears threatening to spill down his cheeks. I knelt down and helped him with the zipper, then pulled his knit hat down over his ears. "Ready, buddy?" He nodded silently, and we walked out of that house into the cold December morning. I could hear the sounds of laughter and excited chatter continuing behind us as Amanda's children enjoyed their Christmas paradise. Tyler and I got into my truck, and I started the engine while he buckled his seatbelt. As we pulled out of the driveway, Tyler finally spoke. "Dad, why doesn't Grandma Dorothy like me?" I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. "It's not about you, Tyler. It's about her. Some people have hearts that aren't big enough for all the love they should have." Is it because Mama was different? The question broke my heart, because at 7 years old, Tyler was already starting to understand the ugliness of prejudice. Your mama was perfect, Tyler. And so are you. Don't you ever let anyone tell you otherwise. We drove home in relative silence, Christmas music playing softly on the radio. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror at Tyler, who stared out the window with a sadness no child should have to carry. By the time we reached our driveway, I'd made a decision that would change everything. That evening, after Tyler had gone to bed, I sat in my home office staring at my computer screen. The house felt too quiet, too empty without the usual Christmas excitement. Tyler had eaten his dinner without complaint and helped me clean up the dishes, but I could see the hurt lingering in his eyes. He'd asked if we could watch a Christmas movie, and we'd settled on The Polar Express. But even Tom Hanks couldn't lift his spirits completely. Now, with Tyler safely asleep upstairs in his race car bed, I decided to do something I should have done years ago. I logged into the online banking system for the Morrison Family Trust. The trust had been established by my grandfather, Robert Morrison, before his death 8 years ago. Grandpa Bob had been a shrewd businessman who'd built a small construction company into a multi-million-dollar enterprise before selling it and investing the proceeds wisely. He'd left the bulk of his estate in a trust designed to support his descendants, but he'd named me as the primary trustee because, in his words, I was the only one with sense and a strong work ethic. At the time, I'd been 24 years old and overwhelmed by the responsibility. Grandpa Bob had left $2.8 million under my control with instructions to distribute funds for reasonable family needs, including housing, education, and health care. I'd taken the responsibility seriously, approving monthly stipends and special requests without much investigation. Now, as I scrolled through 8 years of transaction records, I felt sick to my stomach. Dorothy Morrison. My grandmother had been receiving $3,000 every month for living expenses. That was $36,000 per year. In addition, she'd received special distributions for home repairs, totaling another $42,000 over the past 3 years. But Amanda's records were even worse. Her children's private school tuition, $18,000 per year per child for 3 children. That was $54,000 annually just for school. Her mortgage assistance, $2,000 monthly. Car payments for both Amanda and Jake, $800 monthly. Additional emergency distributions for everything from vacation costs to medical bills that should have been covered by Jake's insurance. I did the math and felt my stomach drop. In the past year alone, I had approved distributions totaling over $160,000 to my family members. Over the 8 years since Grandpa Bob's death, I'd given them more than $1 million, and they were using that money to exclude my son. I picked up my phone and called Douglas Petersons, the family attorney who'd helped Grandpa Bob establish the trust. Doug had been a family friend for 20 years, and I trusted his judgment. Alan. Doug's voice sounded surprised. "It's pretty late for a phone call. Is everything okay?" "Doug, I need to understand something about the trust. When you're distributing money to family members, are there any requirements about how they treat other family members?" There was a pause. "That's an unusual question. Can you be more specific?" I explained what had happened at Christmas, and Doug listened without interruption. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Alan, your grandfather included a clause in the trust about family unity and mutual respect. He was very clear that beneficiaries should be contributing to family harmony, not destroying it. If someone is using trust funds to harm or exclude other family members, you have full authority to suspend their distributions." "What about Grandma Dorothy claiming financial hardship?" Doug chuckled dryly. "Dorothy Morrison owns her house free and clear. It's worth about $450,000. She has a pension from your grandfather's company worth about $60,000 annually. With the trust distributions, she's receiving close to $100,000 per year in income. She's hardly struggling financially." After I hung up with Doug, I spent another hour reviewing the financial records. Every luxury Amanda's family enjoyed, every comfort Grandma Dorothy lived with, had been funded by the trust I controlled. And they'd been using my generosity to justify excluding Tyler because his mother wasn't the right kind of person. I walked upstairs and checked on Tyler. He was sleeping peacefully, one arm wrapped around the stuffed dog Jessica had given him for his 5th birthday. In the dim light from the hallway, I could see Jessica's features in his face. The strong jawline, the thick eyelashes, the olive skin tone that marked him as his mother's son. Standing there in his doorway, I made a promise to both Tyler and Jessica's memory. Never again would I allow anyone to use my resources to hurt my child. Never again would I fund their discrimination and hatred. I walked back downstairs and spent the rest of the night researching my legal options. By the time the sun came up on December 26th, I had a plan that would change everything. 3 days later, I called an emergency family meeting. I'd spent those days carefully documenting 8 years of financial distributions, while Tyler enjoyed the new video game system I'd bought him the day after our disastrous Christmas visit. He'd been confused about the sudden gift, but I'd explained that sometimes Christmas comes in different packages and at different times. "But Dad, why didn't Grandma Dorothy get me anything?" he'd asked while setting up his new Nintendo Switch. "Because some people make bad choices, buddy." But that doesn't mean you have to suffer for their bad choices. Now, I sat in Dad's living room with printed bank statements, legal documents, and a recording app open on my phone. David Morrison. My father lived in a modest ranch house in Hilliard, about 20 minutes from my place. He'd always been the peacemaker in our family, trying to smooth over conflicts and keep everyone happy. Today, his peacemaking skills were going to be tested. I appreciate everyone coming, I said as Amanda Jake Mom and Grandma Dorothy settled into the worn furniture that had been in Dad's living room for 15 years. Tyler was at his friend Marcus's house for a playdate, safely away from what I knew was going to be an ugly confrontation. Alan, I hope you're here to apologize, Grandma Dorothy said primly. She sat in Dad's recliner, wearing her church dress and pearls, looking every inch the proper grandmother except for the coldness in her eyes. Your behavior on Christmas Day was completely unacceptable. My behavior? I kept my voice level and placed the stack of bank statements on the coffee table. Let's talk about behavior, Grandma. Let's start with these. I spread out 8 years of trust distributions like a dealer laying out cards. $3,000 monthly to you, Grandma, $36,000 annually, plus special distributions for home repairs, car maintenance, and medical expenses. In total, over the past 8 years, you've received $412,000 from the Morrison Family Trust. Grandma Dorothy's face went pale, but she lifted her chin defiantly. That money was intended for family support. Your grandfather wanted to take care of his loved ones. You're right. He did want to take care of his loved ones. All of them. I pulled out another set of statements. Amanda, let's look at your numbers. $54,000 annually for private school tuition for 3 children. $24,000 annually for mortgage assistance. $9,600 annually for car payments. Plus emergency distributions for vacations, medical bills, and other expenses. Total received $638,000. Jake shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Look, man, we never asked for handouts. We would have managed without the money. Really? I pulled out my phone and opened the recording app. Because I have conversations that suggest otherwise, I played back a voicemail Amanda had left 6 months earlier, begging for additional funds for a family vacation to Disney World, because the kids deserve nice things. And it's not our fault Alan got all the money. Amanda's face flushed red. You recorded private conversations. I kept voicemails. There's a difference. I pulled out another document. But here's the interesting part. Yesterday, I had a conversation with Doug Peterson about the terms of the trust. Grandpa Bob included specific language about family unity and mutual respect. I read directly from the trust document. Beneficiaries must demonstrate genuine care and concern for all family members, particularly minor children, and must not use trust assets to create division or favoritism within the Morrison family. Dad cleared his throat nervously. Alan, I think we can work this out without bringing lawyers into it. I agree, Dad. That's why I'm giving everyone a choice. I looked around the room at each family member. Tyler is 7 years old. He's never done anything to hurt any of you. He's a straight-A student. He's polite. He's kind to animals and other children. The only thing wrong with Tyler, according to this family, is that his mother was Mexican-American and worked for a living instead of inheriting money. That's not what this is about, Mom protested weakly. Then what is it about? I pulled out my phone again and played another recording, this one from a family barbecue 2 summers ago. Grandma Dorothy's voice came through clearly. I don't understand why Alan had to marry that girl. She's not our kind of people, and her son will never really fit in with our family. The room fell silent except for the sound of Grandma Dorothy's sharp intake of breath. I have 6 more recordings like that, I said calmly. Comments about Tyler's appearance, his behavior, his intelligence, his worth as a human being. All of it funded by money from a trust established by a man who believed in treating people with dignity and respect. Amanda stood up abruptly. "You can't cut us off. We depend on that money. I can and I will unless things change immediately." I stood up to face her. "Here's my offer. You have 24 hours to provide Tyler with a written apology for the treatment he received on Christmas Day. Grandma Dorothy will personally apologize for forgetting him and explain that it will never happen again. Going forward, Tyler will receive exactly the same treatment as Emma, Noah, and Sophia. Same gifts, same attention, same respect. And if we refuse—" Jake had finally put down his phone and was paying attention. "Then, as of tomorrow at 5 p.m., all trust distributions cease permanently. No more monthly stipends, no more emergency funds, no more tuition payments, no more mortgage assistance. You'll all be on your own financially." Grandma Dorothy erupted. "You can't do this. You're abandoning your family." "I'm protecting my family," I replied. "Tyler is my family, and I won't allow anyone to use my grandfather's money to hurt him." Dad tried one last time to mediate. "Alan, couldn't we find some middle ground? Maybe Tyler doesn't need exactly the same treatment as the other children. He's younger, and his needs are different." I stared at my father. This man who'd taught me to ride a bike and helped me with my math homework, and realized he didn't understand either. Dad, Tyler's mother is dead. He lost the most important person in his world when he was 4 years old. All he has left is me and this family. If you think he needs less love, less attention, or fewer Christmas presents than his cousins, then you don't understand what family means. I gathered up my papers and headed for the door. "You have 24 hours to decide what matters more, your prejudice or your financial security." As I reached for the doorknob, Grandma Dorothy's voice cut through the air like a blade. "You're just like your grandfather Alan, cold and ruthless, using money to control people." I turned back to face her one last time. "You're right. I am like my grandfather. He built this family's wealth through hard work and determination, and he would be disgusted to see how you've used it to justify treating a child like garbage." I walked out of that house knowing I'd never have a normal relationship with my family again. But as I drove home to Tyler, I also knew I'd finally done what I should have done years ago. I'd chosen my son over their money and their hatred and their small-minded prejudice. 24 hours later, my phone remained silent. No apologies, no promises of change, no recognition that Tyler deserved better. At exactly 5 p.m., I called Doug Peterson and gave him the authorization he needed to cut off all trust distributions immediately. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in years. Tyler and I made pancakes for breakfast, and he chattered happily about his upcoming playdate with his friend Marcus. As I watched my son pour syrup carefully onto his stack of pancakes, I realized how much stress I'd been carrying about family events and managing everyone's expectations. "Dad, can we go to the zoo this weekend?" Tyler asked around a mouthful of breakfast. "Absolutely, buddy. We can go wherever you want." After dropping Tyler off at school, I drove to Doug Peterson's office in downtown Columbus. I wanted to make sure the trust modifications were legally bulletproof and that my family couldn't challenge my decisions in court. "Everything's been filed correctly," Doug assured me as we reviewed the paperwork. "As trustee, you have complete discretion over distributions. Your grandfather specifically chose you because he trusted your judgment. What if they try to sue? They can try, but they won't win. The trust document gives you absolute authority, and you've clearly documented their violation of the family unity clause." Doug leaned back in his chair. "Alan, can I give you some personal advice?" "Sure. You did the right thing. I've seen too many families destroyed by money and prejudice. Your grandfather would be proud." I left Doug's office and went to my job site, where I was overseeing the construction of a new office building for a local accounting firm. Physical labor had always helped me think clearly, and I spent the morning working alongside my crew, installing drywall and running electrical conduit. At 11:30 a.m., my phone started buzzing. The first call was from Dad. I let it go to voicemail. The second call was from Mom. Voicemail. The third call was from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, I heard Dad's voice, high-pitched and panicked. "Alan, thank God you answered. I need to talk to you right away." "I'm at work, Dad. What's going on?" "It's an emergency. I need $4,200 by 3 o'clock today." I stopped hammering and stepped away from the noise of the construction site. "What kind of emergency?" "Your mother's medical bills. The insurance company denied her claim for the MRI she had last month, and they're threatening to send it to collections." I knew for a fact that Dad had excellent health insurance through his retirement package from the city water department. There was no way Mom's medical bills weren't covered. "Dad, that doesn't make sense. Your insurance has always covered medical procedures." "Well, there was some kind of mix-up with the paperwork. Look, I don't have time to explain everything. I just need the money today." "Have you called the insurance company to straighten out the mix-up?" "Alan, please. I'm begging you. Just this once. I'll pay you back as soon as we get this sorted out." The desperation in his voice told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't about Mom's medical bills. This was about the family suddenly realizing they couldn't pay their expenses without trust money. "I'm sorry, Dad. I can't help you." "What do you mean you can't help me? You have millions of dollars. I have a trust fund that's designed to support family members who treat each other with respect and kindness. You've made it clear that Tyler doesn't qualify for that treatment. This is different. This is a medical emergency. No, Dad. This is the consequence of choosing hatred over love." I hung up and silenced my phone. By the time I picked Tyler up from school at 3:15, I had 47 missed calls from various family members. "How was school today, buddy?" I asked as Tyler climbed into the passenger seat of my truck. "Really good. My teacher said I'm reading at the highest level in the class. And guess what? Marcus invited me to his birthday party next weekend." "That's fantastic. We'll get him a really nice present." As we drove home, Tyler kept up a steady stream of chatter about his day. He'd gotten an A+ on his spelling test, he'd helped a kindergartner tie his shoes at recess, and he'd finished his math worksheet before anyone else in his class. Listening to him, I was struck by how normal and happy he seemed. Without the stress of family drama and the constant reminder that he wasn't good enough for his relatives, Tyler was flourishing. We stopped at the grocery store to pick up ingredients for homemade pizza, one of Tyler's favorite dinners. As we walked through the aisles, Tyler carefully helped me select vegetables for the toppings and picked out a bag of his favorite shredded cheese. He was polite to the cashier, helped me load groceries into the truck, and buckled his seatbelt without being reminded. This was my family. This 7-year-old boy who said please and thank you, who cared about other people's feelings, who worked hard in school and always tried his best. He was worth more than all the money in Grandpa Bob's trust, and he deserved better than a family who saw his dead mother's heritage as something shameful. That evening, as Tyler and I made pizza together in our kitchen, my phone continued buzzing with calls and text messages. Tyler noticed and looked concerned. "Dad, why is your phone making so much noise?" "Just some people who are upset about something. It's not important." "Are they upset with us?" I stopped spreading sauce on the pizza dough and knelt down to Tyler's eye level. "Tyler, do you remember what I told you in the car on Christmas Day about some people having hearts that aren't big enough?" He nodded solemnly. "Well, sometimes when people with small hearts lose something they think they deserve, they get angry and try to blame other people. But their anger isn't really about us. It's about their own choices." Tyler considered this carefully. Like when Emma gets mad at Noah for playing with her toys, but she's really mad because she didn't want to share. Exactly like that. Very smart, buddy. We finished making our pizza and ate dinner while watching a nature documentary about penguins. Tyler was fascinated by how penguin fathers protected their eggs in the Antarctic winter, keeping them warm while the mothers hunted for food. The daddy penguins must really love their babies, Tyler observed. Yes, they do. That's what dads are supposed to do. Protect their children no matter what. As Tyler got ready for bed that night, he seemed more relaxed and confident than he had in months. He brushed his teeth without being reminded, picked out his clothes for school the next day, and read 3 chapters of his current book before turning off his light. "Dad," he called softly as I tucked him in. "What is it, buddy?" "I'm glad it's just us. We're a good team." I kissed his forehead and smoothed back his hair. "We're the best team, Tyler, and we always will be." Downstairs, I finally looked at my phone. The missed calls had continued throughout the evening, along with increasingly frantic text messages. The pattern was clear. My family had been living far beyond their means, using trust money to maintain lifestyles they couldn't afford independently. Without those monthly distributions, they were facing immediate financial crisis. But as I looked around at our comfortable but modest home, where Tyler's artwork hung on the refrigerator and his school awards were displayed on the mantel, I felt nothing but peace. We had everything we needed, and more importantly, we had each other. The money had never been the point. The point was building a life based on love, respect, and human dignity. And finally, after 8 years of funding their prejudice, I was free to focus on what really mattered. The next morning started like any other. Tyler and I had our usual breakfast of cereal and orange juice, and I drove him to school while listening to his excited chatter about a science project on solar systems. I was supposed to help him build a model of Jupiter this weekend, complete with its major moons. The normalcy felt wonderful after years of dreading family phone calls and walking on eggshells around relatives who saw my son as a burden. I'd been working as a project manager for Henderson Construction for 6 years, ever since finishing my degree in construction management. We specialized in commercial buildings, and I was currently overseeing the construction of a new medical office complex on the north side of Columbus. It was challenging work that I genuinely enjoyed, and it paid well enough to support Tyler and me without touching the trust fund. I was reviewing blueprint modifications with my foreman, Rick Martinez, when I heard shouting from the parking lot. Rick and I exchanged glances as the voices grew louder and more agitated. "Sounds like someone's having a bad day," Rick said, shaking his head. Through the window of the construction trailer, I could see a woman in a dark coat arguing with Tony, our security guard. My stomach dropped as I recognized the voice. It was Mom. "I need to speak with Alan Morrison right now," she was shouting. "He's my son, and I know he's here." I walked outside to find Mom standing next to her car, tears streaming down her face. Her usually perfect hair was messy, and her makeup was smeared. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Mom, what are you doing here?" She rushed toward me, grabbing my arms with both hands. "Alan, honey, please. We need to talk. This is all a terrible misunderstanding." Several of my crew members had stopped working and were watching the scene unfold. I could feel my face burning with embarrassment as Mom continued to plead loudly. "Please, Alan. Your grandmother made a mistake. She admits it now. Tyler will be treated fairly from now on, I promise. Mom, you need to leave. This is my workplace." "I can't leave." "Don't you understand your father had a heart attack scare last night? We're buried in medical bills and the mortgage payment is due tomorrow. If you don't restore the trust payments, we're going to lose everything." Rick appeared at my elbow, his expression concerned. "Alan, you okay? Want me to call the police?" "No, it's fine. She's just upset." I turned back to Mom. "You need to go home and calm down. We can talk about this later. Later. There is no later. The bank is foreclosing on Dorothy's house next week. Amanda's kids are going to be pulled out of school because we can't pay tuition. Your own family is falling apart, and you don't even care. I felt a flash of anger at the emotional manipulation. Where was your concern for Tyler when he was sitting alone on Christmas morning watching his cousins open 36 presents while he got nothing? That was different. Dorothy wasn't thinking clearly. Old people make mistakes sometimes. For 3 years, Mom. She's been making the same mistake for 3 years. Mom's voice took on a desperate edge. Fine. You're right. We were wrong. Tyler deserves better treatment. I admit it. Now please just restore the payments temporarily while we figure this out. Before I could respond, another car pulled into the parking lot. Amanda climbed out of her silver SUV, followed by Emma, Noah, and Sophia. She'd brought the kids as emotional leverage, hoping I wouldn't be able to say no to their faces. Uncle Alan, Emma called out, running toward me with her arms outstretched. I hugged my 9-year-old niece, but my heart was heavy. These children were innocent victims of their parents' prejudice and poor financial planning. Hey, sweetheart, shouldn't you be in school? Amanda approached more cautiously, keeping the younger children close to her side. Alan, we need to talk. The kids are scared. They don't understand why suddenly everything is falling apart. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided Tyler wasn't worth a Christmas present. We're sorry about that. Amanda's voice cracked with desperation. We'll make it up to him. We'll get him whatever he wants. Just please don't punish the children for our mistakes. Rick touched my shoulder gently. Boss, maybe you should take the rest of the day off. Deal with this family stuff at home. I shook my head. I'm not going anywhere. This is my job, and I don't bring personal drama to work. I looked at Mom and Amanda sternly. Both of you need to leave immediately. If you want to talk, we can arrange a meeting somewhere appropriate. There's no time for meetings. Mom was crying harder now. Dorothy called this morning. She's having chest pains from the stress. What if she has a heart attack? What if she dies because you cut off her money? The emotional manipulation was so blatant, it was almost insulting. Grandma Dorothy has excellent healthcare coverage and more than enough assets to handle any medical emergency. Her stress is coming from losing her ability to exclude Tyler, not from any real financial hardship. Amanda pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. Look at this. Noah has been crying for 2 days because he thinks he did something wrong. Sophia asked me if Uncle Alan doesn't love her anymore. How do I explain this to children? I looked at the photo of my nephew's tear-stained face and felt my resolve waver for a moment. Then I remembered Tyler asking why Santa hadn't come to Grandma's house for him, and my determination returned. You tell them the truth, Amanda. You tell them that actions have consequences and that treating people badly eventually catches up with you. Please, Mom begged. What do you want us to do? Do you want us to grovel? Do you want us to get on our knees and beg because we will? We'll do whatever it takes. I want you to genuinely care about Tyler's well-being without me having to pay you to do it. The argument continued for another 20 minutes with Mom and Amanda becoming increasingly desperate and dramatic. Several other construction workers had gathered to watch, and I could see curious faces in the windows of the adjacent office buildings. My professional reputation was being damaged by this public spectacle. Finally, Tony the security guard approached diplomatically. Mr. Morrison, I'm going to have to ask these ladies to move their vehicles. They're blocking the construction entrance, and we've got a concrete delivery coming in 15 minutes. Mom and Amanda realized they weren't making progress and reluctantly agreed to leave. But as they walked back to their cars, Amanda turned and played her final card. Just so you know, Alan Jake was arrested yesterday. He's being charged with embezzlement from his company. We found out this morning that he's been stealing money to cover our expenses because the trust payments weren't enough. If he goes to prison, the kids, and I will have nothing. Nothing at all. She climbed into her SUV and drove away, leaving me standing in the parking lot, trying to process what she'd just revealed. Jake had been committing crimes to supplement the trust money. My family's financial desperation ran even deeper than I'd realized. Rick patted my shoulder sympathetically. Family can be the hardest thing in the world to deal with, boss. You holding up okay? I'm fine, just tired of being treated like an ATM instead of a human being. We went back to work, but I could feel the curious stares of my crew throughout the rest of the day. Word would spread quickly through the construction community about the dramatic family confrontation at my job site. I'd worked hard to build a reputation as a professional, competent project manager, and now my personal life was threatening to overshadow my career achievements. That evening, as Tyler and I worked on his Jupiter model using styrofoam balls and paint, I tried to push the day's events out of my mind. Tyler was focused intensely on getting the colors just right, his tongue sticking out slightly in concentration. Dad, did you know that Jupiter is so big that all the other planets could fit inside it? I didn't know that. That's amazing. And it has 67 moons. We can't make all of them for the model, but my teacher said I should include the 4 biggest ones. His enthusiasm was infectious, and I found myself genuinely enjoying the project. This was what mattered, spending time with my son, supporting his education, watching him discover new things about the world. Everything else was just noise. As we painted miniature moons, Tyler chatted about his day at school. His friend Marcus had shared his snack with him at lunch. He'd scored the winning goal in playground soccer, and his teacher had complimented his book report on Charlotte's Web. She said I showed good understanding of the character's emotions, Tyler reported proudly. That's because you're a thoughtful person who pays attention to how other people feel. Is that why the family is mad at us? Because we pay attention to feelings out of the mouths of babes. My 7-year-old son had identified the core issue more clearly than any of the adults involved. That's exactly right, buddy. Some people don't like it when you notice how they're treating others. We finished the Jupiter model and set it aside to dry overnight. As Tyler got ready for bed, I reflected on the day's events. My family's desperation was escalating, and I suspected this was only the beginning. But Tyler was thriving in the peaceful environment we'd created, free from the toxic dynamics that had poisoned family gatherings for years. Whatever happened next, I was confident I'd made the right choice. My son's emotional well-being was worth more than all the money in the world, and I would never again allow anyone to use that money to hurt him. 2 weeks passed in blissful quiet. Tyler's grades continued to improve, and he'd made several new friends at school. We'd established new routines that didn't revolve around managing family drama or preparing for stressful visits with relatives who barely tolerated Tyler's presence. Instead, we spent our evenings working on homework, building model airplanes, and reading chapter books together. Tyler had started a new book series about a boy detective, and he was completely absorbed in the stories. Every night he'd summarize the latest mystery for me over dinner, complete with theories about who the culprit might be. His imagination and analytical thinking skills were developing rapidly in this positive, supportive environment. I was reading the newspaper over my morning coffee when I saw Jake's name in the local crime blotter. Jacob Henley, 34 of Worthington, was arrested on charges of embezzling $67,000 from Morrison Accounting Services over a 2-year period. $67,000. The article went on to explain that Jake had been falsifying expense reports and creating fake vendor accounts to siphon money from his employer. He'd been Amanda's husband for 8 years, and I'd never suspected he was capable of this level of deception. My phone rang while I was still processing the news. It was Dad, and for the first time in 2 weeks, I decided to answer. "Alan, have you seen the newspaper?" "Just read it." I can't say I'm surprised. Amanda is devastated. She had no idea what Jake was doing. She's talking about divorce and she's going to lose the house. The kids are going to have to change schools. I felt a stab of sympathy for Emma, Noah, and Sophia. They were innocent children caught up in their parents' poor decisions. That's unfortunate, but it's not my responsibility. She wants to know if you'll consider providing temporary support while she gets back on her feet. Just enough for the kids to finish out the school year. Has she apologized to Tyler? Alan, her world is falling apart. She's not thinking about Christmas right now. Then my answer is no. After I dropped Tyler off at school, I called Doug Peterson to discuss the implications of Jake's arrest. If Amanda had known about the embezzlement, she could potentially face criminal charges as an accomplice. Even if she was innocent, the scandal would make it difficult for her to find employment or housing. The most important thing is to protect the trust assets, Doug advised. If Amanda's financial desperation led to criminal activity, you need to document everything carefully. That afternoon, I was reviewing contractor invoices in my office when Rick knocked on the door. "Boss, there's a call for you on line 2. Lady says she's your grandmother." I hesitated before picking up the phone. Grandma Dorothy and I hadn't spoken since the confrontation at Dad's house. "Hello, Grandma." "Alan." Her voice sounded thin and shaky. "I need to speak with you." "I'm listening." "I want to apologize for Christmas. I was wrong to exclude Tyler. He's a wonderful little boy, and he deserves better treatment from his family." The words sounded rehearsed, but there was something different in her tone. Less arrogance, more genuine remorse. "I appreciate you saying that. I also want you to know that I understand why you cut off the trust payments. You were protecting your son, and that's what a good father does." I was surprised by her admission. "Thank you for acknowledging that. But Alan, I need your help. Not for money. For Amanda's children." "What kind of help?" "Amanda is going to lose custody of the kids. With Jake facing prison and her financial situation, Child Services is getting involved. Emma, Noah, and Sophia need a stable home environment." My heart sank. I'd been so focused on protecting Tyler from the family's dysfunction that I hadn't considered how the children would be affected by their parents' collapse. "Where are they going to go?" "Your parents want to take them temporarily, but they can't afford to support 3 children on their fixed income. I'm too old to care for young children full-time. Amanda has no other relatives who can help." The implications were clear. Without some form of financial assistance, my niece and nephews could end up in foster care, separated from each other, and from any family connection. "Grandma, I need to think about this." "Of course. But Alan, please remember that those children love Tyler. They've always included him in their games when the adults weren't watching. This situation isn't their fault." After hanging up, I sat in my office thinking about Emma teaching Tyler to play card games during family gatherings, Noah sharing his action figures, and Sophia asking Tyler to read her picture books. The children had never shown prejudice toward each other. The hatred came entirely from the adults. That evening, I broached the subject carefully with Tyler over dinner. "How would you feel if Emma, Noah, and Sophia came to live with Grandpa David and Grandma Linda for a while?" Tyler looked up from his spaghetti-twirling noodles thoughtfully around his fork. "Are they in trouble? Their dad made some bad choices, and their mom is having a hard time taking care of them right now." "Would that mean we could play with them more often?" "Maybe. Would you like that?" Tyler nodded enthusiastically. "Emma promised to teach me how to play chess, and Noah said he'd let me try his skateboard when I'm bigger." His innocent excitement reminded me that children are naturally more forgiving and inclusive than adults. Tyler had been hurt by his relatives' exclusion, but he harbored no resentment toward his young cousins. The next day, I called Doug Peterson to discuss establishing a limited educational trust specifically for Emma, Noah, and Sophia. The funds would be managed through Dad and Mom, but with strict oversight and clear restrictions on their use. We can structure it so that the money goes directly to schools and necessary expenses, Doug explained. Your parents would have no access to cash, just the ability to maintain the children's current living situation. And if they resume the discriminatory behavior toward Tyler, then the trust terminates immediately, and they'll have to find alternative arrangements for the children. That weekend, Tyler and I visited Dad's house for the first time since the confrontation. Emma, Noah, and Sophia were living there temporarily, while Amanda tried to sort out her legal and financial situation. The house felt cramped with 5 people instead of 2, but Dad and Mom were managing with the help of the emergency educational trust I'd established. Tyler was nervous during the car ride over, asking repeatedly if everyone would be nice to him this time. I assured him that things would be different, but I was prepared to leave immediately if anyone treated him poorly. To my surprise, the visit went well. Emma hugged Tyler enthusiastically and immediately set up a chessboard to begin teaching him the game. Noah shared his new book about dinosaurs, and Sophia asked Tyler to help her build a castle out of building blocks. More importantly, Dad and Mom treated Tyler with genuine warmth and attention. They asked about his school projects, complimented his chess skills, and included him naturally in all the family activities. Tyler's gotten so tall, Mom observed, ruffling his hair affectionately. And look how well he's reading. Emma, did you know your cousin is reading chapter books already? The change in their behavior was dramatic and clearly motivated by their new understanding of consequences. Without trust, money to cushion their financial situation, they'd been forced to confront the reality of their choices. After the children went to bed, I had a frank conversation with Dad and Mom about the future. This arrangement is temporary, I explained. The educational trust will continue as long as all the children are treated equally and fairly. But if Tyler ever experiences discrimination again, everything stops immediately. We understand, Dad said quietly. We were wrong, Alan. We let Dorothy's prejudices influence our judgment, and we lost sight of what's really important. Tyler is our grandson. Mom added, tears in her eyes. He deserves the same love and respect as Emma, Noah, and Sophia. We see that now. As Tyler and I drove home that evening, he was more animated than I'd seen him in months. Dad, did you see how good I got at chess? Emma said I'm a natural player. And Noah wants to teach me about fossils next time we visit. I saw that, buddy. You did great today. Do you think they really like me now, or are they just being nice? It was a perceptive question from a 7-year-old who'd learned not to trust adults' motivations. I think they're learning to see how special you are. Sometimes people need time to recognize what's been in front of them all along. Over the following weeks, we established a regular visiting pattern with Dad's house. Tyler developed genuine friendships with his cousins, and the adults consistently treated him with fairness and respect. Amanda, meanwhile, was working 2 part-time jobs while attending paralegal classes at the community college, trying to rebuild her life after Jake's conviction. The family was learning slowly and painfully that love and respect couldn't be bought or taken for granted. And Tyler, secure in his father's protection and surrounded by cousins who genuinely cared about him, was flourishing in ways that had nothing to do with money. 6 months later, I was watching Tyler perform in his school's spring talent show. He'd chosen to recite a poem about friendship that he'd written himself, and his confident voice carried clearly through the auditorium. In the audience, Dad, Mom, Emma, Noah, and Sophia cheered loudly when he finished. Even Grandma Dorothy, who was visiting from the assisted living facility where she'd moved after selling her house, clapped with genuine pride. The transformation in our family dynamics had been gradual but profound. Tyler no longer approached family gatherings with anxiety and uncertainty. Instead, he looked forward to seeing his cousins and had even started sleeping over at Dad's house on occasional weekends. The children had formed the kind of natural, uncomplicated friendships that adults often complicate with their own prejudices and insecurities. Amanda had successfully completed her paralegal program and found a job with a family law firm that specialized in helping women navigate divorce proceedings. She'd moved with the children into a modest apartment, and while money was tight, she was managing independently. More importantly, she'd written Tyler a heartfelt letter apologizing for her past behavior and asking for his forgiveness. "I was wrong to treat you differently because of your mother's background," the letter had said. "Jessica was a beautiful person who loved your father deeply, and you are a wonderful reflection of her kindness and intelligence. I hope someday you'll give me the chance to be the aunt you deserve." Tyler had read the letter carefully and then asked me to help him write a response. "Dear Aunt Amanda," he dictated, "I forgive you for being mean before. I'm glad you're learning to be nicer. Love, Tyler." His capacity for forgiveness at such a young age had amazed me. The most surprising change had come from Grandma Dorothy. After selling her house and settling into a senior community, she'd apparently had time to reflect on her choices and their consequences. She'd asked to speak with me privately during one of our family visits, and her words had been completely unexpected. "Alan, I owe you an explanation and an apology. When Jessica died, I was afraid that Tyler would grow up different from the rest of us. I thought if I kept him at a distance, he wouldn't disrupt the family dynamic I was comfortable with. What made you change your mind? Watching you fight for him made me realize what I'd lost. Tyler is bright, kind, well-behaved, and loving. The qualities I was afraid of were actually the qualities I should have been celebrating." She'd paused, tears gathering in her eyes. "I also realized that my prejudice against Jessica came from ignorance and fear. She was a nurse who dedicated her life to helping people. She raised Tyler to be respectful and thoughtful. What more could I have asked for in a granddaughter-in-law?" Now, 6 months later, Grandma Dorothy sent Tyler birthday cards, asked about his school progress, and included him naturally in conversations about family history and traditions. She'd even started teaching him to play bridge, a game she'd never offered to teach Emma, Noah, or Sophia. After the talent show, we all went out for ice cream at Tyler's favorite parlor. Tyler sat between Emma and Noah, animatedly describing his science fair project about renewable energy. The children were completely absorbed in each other's company, sharing jokes and making plans for summer activities. "Tyler, your poem was really good," Sophia said admiringly. "Did you really write it all by yourself? Dad helped me with some of the rhymes, but most of it was my idea." "You should be a writer when you grow up," Emma suggested. "Or maybe a teacher, since you're so good at explaining things." I watched this interaction with deep satisfaction. These children were forming relationships based on genuine affection and mutual respect, exactly the kind of family bonds that money couldn't buy. Later that evening, as Tyler and I sat in our living room reading before bedtime, he looked up from his book with a thoughtful expression. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Always, buddy." "What's on your mind?" "Why did you give money to everyone before, even when they were mean to me?" It was a complex question that required a careful answer. "I thought that if I was generous and helpful, it would make them more loving toward both of us. I was wrong. But you stopped giving them money when they hurt my feelings." "Yes, because protecting you is more important than keeping other people happy." Tyler considered this seriously. "And now they're nice to me, even though you don't give them as much money." "That's right. Do you know why that is? Because they learned that being mean has consequences." "Exactly. And because they discovered that you're worth loving for who you are not, because someone pays them to love you." Tyler smiled and returned to his book, apparently satisfied with the explanation. But his question had highlighted the most important lesson from our family's journey. Genuine relationships couldn't be purchased or coerced, but had to be built on foundations of mutual respect and authentic care. The educational trust for Emma, Noah, and Sophia continued, but with clear boundaries and oversight. Dad and Mom received enough support to maintain the children's stability, but not enough to return to their previous lifestyle of financial dependency. Amanda contributed what she could toward her children's expenses, and she was working toward complete independence. I'd also established a scholarship fund in Jessica's memory, designed to help first-generation college students from working-class families pursue careers in healthcare. The fund would ensure that Jessica's legacy of service and compassion would continue to impact lives long after her own had been cut short. Most importantly, I'd created a will and trust structure that would protect Tyler's inheritance from future discrimination or prejudice. When he turned 18, he would gain access to his own trust fund, but with built-in protections to ensure that his generosity couldn't be exploited by people who confused financial dependency with family loyalty. As I tucked Tyler into bed that night, he gave me an extra long hug. "Dad, I'm really glad we're a team." "Me too, buddy. We're the best team there is. And I'm glad our family learned how to be nicer." "They learned from watching you, Tyler. You showed them how to be kind and forgiving even when people hurt your feelings." "Do you think Mama would be proud of how everything worked out?" I smoothed back his dark hair so much like Jessica's and kissed his forehead. "I think Mama would be incredibly proud of the young man you're becoming. And I think she'd be happy that our family finally learned how to love each other the right way." Tyler drifted off to sleep with a smile on his face, secure in the knowledge that he was valued, protected, and genuinely loved. The journey to reach this point had been painful and difficult, but it had resulted in something much more valuable than money, a family united by authentic care rather than divided by prejudice and financial manipulation. The next morning brought a new day full of possibilities. Tyler had a soccer game, followed by a family barbecue at Dad's house, where all the children would play together, while the adults focused on supporting their happiness rather than maintaining appearances. I'd learned that true family strength came not from financial security, but from the courage to stand up for what was right, even when it meant losing relationships that had never been healthy to begin with. By choosing Tyler's emotional well-being over everyone else's financial comfort, I'd forced our family to confront their prejudices and ultimately become the loving, supportive unit that Grandpa Bob had envisioned when he established the trust. Money, I realized, was just a tool. It could be used to build up or tear down, to include or exclude, to reward kindness or enable cruelty. The real measure of a family's worth wasn't found in bank accounts or trust funds, but in their capacity to love unconditionally, protect the vulnerable, and choose compassion over convenience. Tyler and I had both emerged from this experience stronger, wiser, and more confident in our own values. We'd learned that standing up for what's right might be lonely and difficult, but it ultimately led to relationships based on genuine respect rather than financial obligation. As I watched Tyler grow into a confident, compassionate young person, surrounded by family members who had learned to value him for his true worth, I knew that Jessica would have been proud of both of us. We'd honored her memory by refusing to allow prejudice to diminish our family's capacity for love. And in the end, that was the greatest inheritance I could give my son, the knowledge that he was worthy of love and respect, and the confidence to demand nothing less from the people in his life. Have you ever had to choose between keeping peace in your family and protecting someone you love? Sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the most meaningful changes. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult. Thank you for listening, and remember that true family love can't be bought, but it can be earned through respect, kindness, and genuine care for each other.